The rain came down in heavy sheets, each drop stinging my skin like tiny needles as I dragged myself across the wet asphalt. My police uniform, once crisp and authoritative, now hung in tatters, soaked with a mixture of rainwater and my own blood. Every inch I moved sent waves of agony through my body, but I kept crawling, kept fighting. That's what Detective Alexandra Hayes always did. Fight. I couldn't feel my legs anymore. The bullet had entered my lower back during the ambush, and now everything below my waist seemed to exist in some distant universe I no longer had access to. My service weapon was gone, my radio shattered during the fall down the embankment. No backup, no way to call for help. Just me, the rain, and the lonely stretch of coastal road that wound through the outskirts of Eastport Harbor. Stay awake, I whispered to myself, my voice barely audible over the drumming of rain on pavement. Stay awake, Alex. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth as I coughed, pain exploding through my chest. 3 years on the force, and this was how it would end, alone on a deserted road, the victim of an ambush that I should have seen coming. The Costello investigation had gotten too close, and now I was paying the price. The headlights appeared in the distance like twin harbingers of death or salvation. I was too far gone to know which. They cut through the rainy darkness, growing larger as the vehicle approached. I tried to raise my arm, to signal for help, but my strength was fading fast, my consciousness slipping away like sand through fingers. The luxury SUV slowed as it neared, its tires hissing on the wet road. Even through my pain-clouded vision, I recognized the sleek black Escalade with tinted windows, the kind that screamed money and power in equal measure. Not a patrol car, not an ambulance. My last hope was a passing civilian who might take pity on a dying cop. The vehicle came to a stop several yards away. Through the curtain of rain, I saw the driver's door open and a large figure stepped out, followed by another bodyguard. The silhouette of the second man remained by the car door, while the first approached, his movements measured, cautious. "She's wearing a uniform," I heard the bodyguard call out. "Boss, it's a cop." The approaching figure paused momentarily before continuing toward me. As he drew closer, the headlights illuminated him from behind, casting his face in shadow while highlighting the impeccable cut of his black overcoat that somehow remained dry despite the downpour. An umbrella, I realized. A simple courtesy the rain had not afforded me. "Please," I managed to rasp as he crouched down beside me, the umbrella now sheltering us both from the relentless rain. "Help me." That's when I saw his face, and what little breath I had left, caught in my throat. Dominic Rousseau. The man whose file I had spent the last 8 months studying, the man whose criminal empire controlled everything from the docks to the mayor's office in Eastport Harbor. The man I had been building a case against until tonight's ambush had shattered everything, including me. I knew that face. The strong jaw always meticulously shaved, the prominent nose that had been broken at least once, the dark eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. But photographs in a case file couldn't capture the aura of controlled power that radiated from him, the subtle scent of expensive cologne that somehow cut through the metallic smell of my own blood. "Detective Hayes," he said, his voice low and smooth like aged whiskey, pronouncing my name with a familiarity that sent a chill through me that had nothing to do with the rain or my injuries. He knew who I was. Of course he did. Just as I had been watching him, he had undoubtedly been watching me. "You're bleeding out," he observed calmly, his gaze traveling to the growing puddle of red beneath me, mixing with rainwater to create pale crimson tendrils that snaked across the asphalt. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all. Dying in front of the very man I had sworn to bring to justice. But all that came out was a wet, gurgling sound as more blood filled my mouth. "Andre," Rousseau called to his bodyguard without looking away from me, "bring the medical kit, and call Dr. Petrov. Tell him to meet us at the lake house." "Boss," the guard protested, his voice tight with concern. "She's a detective, the one who's been—" "I know exactly who she is." Rousseau cut him off, his tone leaving no room for argument. "The kit. Now." I tried to focus on his face as he carefully rolled me onto my side, his movements surprisingly gentle for hands that I knew had ordered countless deaths. The pain was unbearable, and I heard myself scream, the sound distant and foreign to my own ears. "Stay with me, detective," he commanded. And there was something in his voice, a tension, an urgency, that seemed out of place. Why would Dominic Russo, the man whose organization I had dedicated my career to destroying, care whether I lived or died? Unless he wanted the pleasure of killing me himself. Why? I managed to whisper, as he applied pressure to my wound, his expensive suit now stained with my blood. Those dark eyes locked onto mine, and for a moment, something flickered in their depths. Something I couldn't identify through my pain-hazed consciousness. Your father would never forgive me if I let his daughter die on my watch, he said quietly, and the world tilted on its axis. My father, Patrick Hayes, had been a beat cop his entire career, a man of unwavering integrity who had died of a heart attack 3 years ago, shortly before my promotion to detective. What could he possibly have to do with Dominic Russo? I wanted to ask, needed to understand, but darkness was encroaching rapidly at the edges of my vision. The last thing I saw before consciousness slipped away was Dominic Russo's face, tense with a concern that made no sense, and the last thing I felt were his strong arms lifting me from the cold, wet ground. I woke to the soft beeping of medical equipment and the scent of antiseptic. For a moment, I thought I was in a hospital, that someone had found me on that road and delivered me to safety. Then I tried to move my hand and felt the cold bite of metal around my wrist. Handcuffs. I was restrained. My eyes flew open to find myself in what appeared to be a private medical suite, not a hospital room. Large windows revealed a view of pine trees, and beyond them, the glittering surface of what must be a lake. Expensive medical equipment surrounded the bed, and an IV line ran into my arm, delivering clear fluid, and, judging by the muted nature of the pain in my lower back, some serious painkillers. You're finally awake, came a voice from the corner of the room. You've been unconscious for 3 days. I turned my head, wincing at the stiffness in my neck, to find Dominic Russo seated in an armchair, watching me with those intense dark eyes. He'd traded the suit for dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that looked casually expensive, but his presence was no less commanding for the change in attire. Where am I? My voice came out as a ragged whisper, my throat dry from disuse. Somewhere safe, he replied, standing and approaching the bed. He picked up a glass of water from the bedside table and held it to my lips. I wanted to refuse, to show some defiance, but thirst overrode pride, and I drank greedily. Why am I handcuffed? I asked when he withdrew the glass. Precaution, Russo said with a slight shrug. You are, after all, the detective who's been trying to put me in prison for the better part of a year. A flush of anger gave me strength. Where's your doctor? I need to know my condition. Dr. Petrov saved your life, Russo said, returning to his seat. The bullet damaged your spinal cord. He managed to remove it and repair much of the damage, but... He paused, and I saw something almost like regret cross his features. He's not certain if you'll walk again. Time will tell. The news should have devastated me, but I felt oddly numb. Perhaps it was the drugs, or perhaps I was still in shock from finding myself alive at all, and in the custody of Eastport Harbor's most notorious crime lord. You should have let me die, I said flatly. Russo's expression hardened. That wasn't an option. Because of my father? I challenged, remembering his words on the road. What exactly was my straight arrow cop dad to you, Russo? He studied me for a long moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. Patrick Hayes wasn't always the man you knew, he finally said. Before he met your mother, before you were born, he and we grew up together, in the same neighborhood, with the same struggles. I shook my head, unwilling to believe it. You're lying. My father was a good man. He was, Russo agreed, surprising me. One of the best I've ever known. The fact that we chose different paths doesn't change that. Different paths? I echoed incredulously. He upheld the law. You break it for profit. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. It's rarely that simple, detective. Your father understood that better than most. If you were such good friends, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice, why didn't you come to his funeral? I was there, he replied quietly. At the back. I couldn't risk bringing attention to our connection. It would have damaged his reputation, and yours by extension. I turned away, staring out at the lake beyond the window. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the water. It was beautiful, peaceful, a stark contrast to the turmoil inside me. "Why did you save me?" I asked, still not looking at him. The truth this time. I heard him sigh, then the soft rustle of fabric as he shifted in his seat. "I made a promise to your father years ago," he said, his voice taking on a distant quality, as if he were looking into the past. He knew the risks of his job, especially with some of the cases he worked. He asked me to look out for you if anything happened to him. I turned back to face him, searching his expression for any sign of deception. "My father has been dead for 3 years. I've been investigating you for 8 months. If you knew who I was, why wait until now to intervene?" Russo's dark eyes met mine unflinchingly. "I've been watching over you since his death. From a distance, as he would have wanted. I never intended to interfere. Until I saw you dying on that road, those men who ambushed me," I said, a sudden realization dawning. "They weren't yours?" His expression darkened. "No, they were Victorio's. He's been trying to move in on my territory for months now. Taking you out was likely a calculated move, eliminating a threat while potentially framing me for a cop killing. Carlo Victorio. The name was familiar from our intelligence reports. A rising power from the southern territories looking to expand northward. My team had noted increased tensions between the Russo and Victorio organizations, but hadn't connected it to our investigation. "How did you find me on that road?" I asked, the detective in me still piecing together the puzzle despite my situation. "Anonymous tip," Russo replied with a slight smirk. "One of my informants in Victorio's organization warned me about the hit. I was too late to prevent it, but not too late to find you. I processed this information, trying to separate truth from manipulation. Dominic Russo was, above all, a survivor. Everything he did served a purpose." "What happens now?" I asked, rattling the handcuff against the bed rail. "Am I your prisoner? Your leverage against the department?" Russo stood and approached the bed again. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small key. Without a word, he unlocked the handcuff, freeing my wrist. "You're my guest," he said, stepping back. "At least until you're well enough to make your own decisions." I rubbed my wrist, eyeing him suspiciously. "And then?" "Then you decide," he said simply. "Go back to your life, your investigation. Or what?" I challenged. His expression remained impassive. "Or you listen to what I have to say about Carlo Victorio, about what's really happening in Eastport Harbor, and about why your father asked me to protect you." Before I could respond, the door opened, and a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair entered, carrying a medical bag. "Ah, Detective Hayes, you're awake," he said with a slight Eastern European accent. "I'm Dr. Petrov. How is your pain level?" "Manageable," I replied automatically, still processing Russo's words. Good. I need to examine your wound and check your neurological responses, if you don't mind." Russo moved toward the door. "I'll leave you to it, Doctor." "Detective?" He nodded at me, his expression unreadable. "We'll continue our conversation later." As he left, closing the door quietly behind him, I stared after him, 1,000 questions burning in my mind. Nothing made sense anymore, not my father's apparent connection to Dominic Russo, not my rescue from certain death, and certainly not the conflicting emotions swirling inside me. Dr. Petrov began his examination, and I winced as he pressed around the wound site. "The surgery went well," he commented as he worked. Mr. Russo insisted on the best equipment being brought in. I've never seen him so concerned about a patient before. I said nothing, my gaze drawn back to the window, to the lake beyond where darkness was now falling. The water's surface transformed from gold to deep indigo. Somewhere out there was my life, my apartment, my precinct, my colleagues who probably thought I was dead. And here I was, alive but broken, in the home of the man I had sworn to destroy. A man who claimed to be fulfilling a promise to my father, a man whose gentle touch as he'd lifted me from that rain-soaked road lingered in my memory like the ghost of a caress. Dr. Petrov completed his examination with clinical efficiency, his expression giving nothing away as he tested the reflexes in my legs. I felt the pressure of his touch, but couldn't make my muscles respond to his commands to flex or extend. "The inflammation around your spinal cord is still significant," he explained as he made notes in a tablet. "It's too early to make definitive prognoses about recovery. For now, rest is your primary medicine." After adjusting my IV and checking the monitors, he left me alone with my thoughts, which immediately turned to escape. I might not be handcuffed anymore, but with legs that wouldn't obey me, I wasn't going anywhere. I was effectively trapped in this luxurious prison with a man who represented everything I had fought against. Night fell completely, and the room grew dark except for the soft glow of medical monitors and the moonlight reflecting off the lake outside. I drifted in and out of consciousness, the painkillers making my thoughts fuzzy around the edges. I wasn't sure how much time had passed when I opened my eyes to find Dominic Russo sitting in the chair beside my bed again, his profile illuminated by the moonlight streaming through the windows. "You should be sleeping," he said, without turning to look at me. "Kind of hard to rest when you're being held by a crime lord," I replied, my voice stronger than it had been earlier. He turned then, those dark eyes studying me. "If I wanted to harm you, Detective Hayes, I wouldn't have spent a small fortune saving your life." "Alex," I said suddenly, surprising myself, "if we're going to have these middle-of-the-night conversations, you might as well call me Alex." A slight smile curved his lips. "Alex?" he repeated, the name sounding different in his deep voice. "Then you should call me Dominic. I prefer to keep things professional, Russo," I replied coldly. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Professional? You're investigating me. I saved your life, and now you're recovering in my home. I think we've moved beyond professional, wouldn't you say?" I couldn't argue with his logic, but I wasn't ready to concede the point. Instead, I changed the subject. "Tell me about my father. How did a cop end up friends with someone like you?" Dominic sat back in his chair, his expression softening with what looked like genuine nostalgia. "We grew up on Harborside, back when it was still a working-class neighborhood. Your grandparents lived 2 doors down from mine. Patrick was 3 years older, but he took me under his wing when local kids were giving me trouble for being Italian." I tried to reconcile this image with the father I knew, a man who never talked about his childhood, who had raised me in the quiet suburbs far from the harbor district. "We were inseparable through high school," Dominic continued. "After graduation, he joined the police academy. I went to work for my uncle's shipping business." His mouth tightened slightly. "Of course you know what kind of shipping my family was really involved in." "Smuggling," I supplied. "Drugs, weapons, occasionally people." He inclined his head, not denying it. "My father died when I was 22. I inherited his responsibilities. And my dad? He knew what you were doing?" Dominic's gaze was steady. He didn't approve, but he understood. "Family obligations meant something to both of us. So what happened?" I asked. "When did you stop being friends?" "We never did," he said quietly. "We just became more careful. He was a cop, I was a criminal," I interjected. "A businessman with complicated interests," he corrected smoothly. "But yes, our paths diverged. When he met your mother, he wanted a clean break from the old neighborhood, a fresh start. I respected that. I remembered my mother, who had died from cancer when I was 16. She had been gentle but strong in her own way. I couldn't imagine her knowing about a friendship between my father and a man like Dominic Russo. "She never knew about me," Dominic said, as if reading my thoughts. "That was Patrick's choice, and I honored it. But he and I still met occasionally. Coffee at neutral locations, talking about old times, current problems." "I don't believe you," I said, but my voice lacked conviction. There had always been parts of my father that seemed closed off, small mysteries I couldn't solve. "Your graduation from the police academy," Dominic said suddenly. "May 2021. You wore your hair up, with a few curls framing your face. Your father couldn't stop smiling." My breath caught. "You were there?" He nodded. "In the back." Patrick spotted me, nodded, but of course kept his distance. That was the last time I saw him in person. He called me a week before his heart attack. Wanted to meet. Said he had concerns about you following in his footsteps. About the path you were choosing. A lump formed in my throat. Why would he be concerned? He was proud when I joined the force. "Proud, Yes, but also worried. Eastport Harbor isn't the city it appears to be on the surface, Alex. Your father knew that better than most. He knew there were lines you couldn't cross, investigations you shouldn't pursue too deeply. Not if you wanted to stay safe. I thought about my father's career. Always a beat cop, never seeking promotion or joining specialized units despite his intelligence and capabilities. I'd always assumed it was because he loved community policing, the direct connection with the neighborhoods he served. Now I wondered if there had been more to it. When you started investigating me, Dominic continued, I kept my distance, respected your choices, but I also had people watching over you, making sure you didn't get in too deep. Anger flared within me. You had me under surveillance? Protection, he corrected. There's a difference. Not to me, I snapped, and clearly your protection wasn't worth much when Victorio's men ambushed me. A flash of what looked like genuine regret crossed his face. That was an oversight I won't repeat. Victorio moved faster than I anticipated. Why would he target me specifically? I asked, the detective in me still working despite everything. My investigation was focused on your operations, not his. Dominic's expression darkened. Because taking you out serves multiple purposes for him. It removes a threat to his expansion plans, potentially frames my organization for a cop killing, and he hesitated. And what? And it hurts me personally, he finished, his voice dropping lower. Victorio knows about my connection to your father. He's the type to exploit any perceived weakness. I processed this, a chill running through me that had nothing to do with my injuries. So I'm a pawn in some twisted game between rival mobsters? No, Dominic said sharply, leaning forward again. You're a skilled detective who got caught in the crossfire of something bigger than you understand. And you're Patrick's daughter. That makes you anything but a pawn to me. The intensity in his eyes made me look away, uncomfortable with the emotions it stirred in me. This man was dangerous in ways I hadn't anticipated when I'd been building my case against him. I need to contact my precinct, I said, changing the subject. They need to know I'm alive. They already know, he replied, surprising me. An anonymous tip led them to where the ambush happened. They found blood. Your blood, and signs of a firefight but no body. You're listed as missing, presumed dead by some, kidnapped by others, and you didn't think to tell me this sooner? I demanded. You weren't conscious sooner, he pointed out reasonably. Besides, it's safer for you if Victorio believes his hit was successful. Safer for your plans, you mean, I accused. Dominic stood, towering over me. Even in casual clothes, there was nothing relaxed about him, every movement controlled, purposeful. My plan is keeping you alive, Alex. Everything else is secondary. Why? I challenged. Because of some promise to my father? I find that hard to believe. He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Believe what you want, but rest assured, when you're strong enough, you'll be free to go back to your life if that's what you choose. And if I choose to continue my investigation? To bring you down? A smile touched his lips, not reaching his eyes. Then I'll know Patrick's daughter is just as stubborn and principled as he was. He moved toward the door, then paused. Try to rest. Dr. Petrov will start physical therapy tomorrow. The road to recovery will be challenging. After he left, I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing despite the exhaustion weighing on my body. Nothing about this situation made sense. Not my rescue, not Dominic's apparent concern for my well-being, and certainly not these revelations about my father. As sleep began to claim me again, one question kept circling in my mind. If everything Dominic had told me was true, how much of my life, my career, my choices, even my investigation, had been built on incomplete information? And what would I do with the truth once I had it? Morning brought sunlight streaming across the lake, turning its surface into a sheet of hammered gold. It also brought the promised physical therapy session with Dr. Petrov and a stern-faced woman he introduced as Nurse Katya, whose strong hands manipulated my unresponsive legs with methodical precision. You must work hard, she instructed in a thick Eastern European accent, as she demonstrated exercises I would need to do multiple times daily. Spinal injuries, they require commitment, determination. The session left me exhausted and drenched in sweat, But there was something satisfying about the exertion, about fighting for my body's recovery rather than lying helplessly in bed. When they finally left, I collapsed against the pillows, breathing heavily. "You did well," came Dominic's voice from the doorway. I hadn't heard him enter. "Spying on my therapy session?" I asked, too tired for real anger. He approached, carrying a tray with what appeared to be breakfast: toast, scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, and coffee that smelled strong enough to stand up on its own. "Checking on your progress," he corrected, setting the tray across my lap. "Dr. Petrov says you're remarkably strong for someone who's been through what you have." I eyed the food suspiciously, despite the way my stomach growled at the aroma. "You're serving me breakfast now?" A hint of amusement flickered in his dark eyes. "The staff has the morning off. I'm not completely helpless in a kitchen." The domesticity of the moment struck me as absurd. Dominic Russo, crime lord of Eastport Harbor, bringing me breakfast in bed. I picked up the fork and cautiously tasted the eggs. They were perfectly seasoned. "I need my phone," I said between bites, hunger overcoming suspicion. "Or a phone, at least. I need to contact my partner, let him know I'm alive." Dominic sat in what I now thought of as his chair beside the bed. "Detective Marcus Stone," he said, nodding. "He's been leading the search for you, against the captain's orders to focus on other cases. Of course Dominic would know about Marcus, about the internal politics of my precinct. His information network was one of the things I'd been investigating. Marcus is a good cop," I said carefully, "and a friend." Something shifted in Dominic's expression. So subtle I almost missed it. "Yes, I'm aware of your friendship." The way he said it made me wonder exactly how much he knew about my brief romantic involvement with Marcus last year. We dated for a few months before deciding we worked better as partners than lovers, but had remained close. "If you contact him now," Dominic continued, "you place both him and yourself at risk. Victorio has informants inside your precinct. Any movement Marcus makes based on information from you will be tracked." I pushed the tray away, appetite suddenly diminished. "So what's your suggestion? Let everyone who cares about me think I'm dead while I recuperate in your lakeside mansion?" "For now, yes," he replied simply. "Until you're stronger and we have a better understanding of Victorio's operation." "We?" I echoed incredulously. "There is no we, Russo." His expression remained impassive, but something flashed in those dark eyes. "Like it or not, we have aligned interests at the moment. You want to stay alive and return to your life. I want to neutralize Victorio's threat to my territory. Both require careful planning." I couldn't argue with his logic, which only irritated me further. "Fine, but I need information. Real information, not just convenient pieces you decide to share." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "What do you want to know?" "Everything about Victorio. Why he's moving against you now, and why he'd risk killing a cop to do it." Dominic leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Carlo Victorio took over his family's operation 3 years ago after his father's death. He's young, ambitious, and lacks the restraint that maintained the balance in this region for decades." "Balance?" I questioned skeptically. "Yes, balance. Contrary to what you might believe, Detective, chaos is bad for business. The previous generation of leaders understood that. Maintained territories, respected boundaries, avoided unnecessary violence, especially against law enforcement. I thought about the criminal landscape of Eastport Harbor as I understood it. Relatively low homicide rates compared to other port cities, organized criminal activities that seemed to occur within certain unspoken parameters. I'd attributed it to good police work, but perhaps there had been other factors at play. "Victorio wants expansion," Dominic continued. "He's making alliances with groups from the West Coast, bringing in new product, new methods that don't align with how things have been done here, such as..." His jaw tightened. "Human trafficking, specifically young women from Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. Fentanyl distribution targeting schools and colleges. Violence as a first resort rather than a last one." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you trying to convince me you're some kind of ethical criminal, Russo? Because my investigation uncovered plenty of illegal activities in your organization." "I'm not claiming moral superiority," he replied evenly. "But there are lines I don't cross. Lines your father understood." The mention of my father brought back the confusion and doubt I'd been wrestling with since our conversation last night. "You keep bringing up my father," I said, using our supposed connection as leverage. "But I only have your word that any of it is true." Dominic reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded photograph, offering it to me without comment. I took it reluctantly, unfolding it to reveal a faded color image from what appeared to be the early 1990s. Two young men stood arm in arm outside a dilapidated apartment building, grins on their faces. One was unmistakably a younger version of my father, his red hair brighter than I remembered it, his face unlined by the years of police work that would eventually wear him down. Beside him, an arm slung around his shoulders, stood a young man who could only be Dominic, leaner, with longer hair, but with the same intense eyes. Something constricted in my chest as I stared at the image. Proof of a connection I had been trying to deny. A glimpse of a father I had never fully known. "He kept that photo in the back of his wallet," Dominic said quietly. "Showed it to me the last time we met for coffee, about a month before he died. Said no matter what paths we'd taken, he never forgot where we started." I handed the photo back, unable to look at it anymore. "Even if you were friends, that doesn't explain why he would ask you to protect me. My father believed in the law, in the system. He wouldn't ask a criminal to watch over his daughter. The world isn't black and white, Alex. Patrick knew that better than most. He also knew there are some threats the system can't protect you from." "What threats?" I demanded. "What was he afraid of?" Dominic hesitated, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Your father made enemies during his career. Not all of them were criminals. Some wore badges, sat in corner offices, held political positions. You're saying there are corrupt cops in my precinct?" It wasn't really a question. Every detective knew there were bad apples, but the scope Dominic was suggesting was disturbing. "I'm saying Eastport Harbor's power structures are more complex than they appear. When Patrick realized you were pursuing a career in law enforcement, he was proud but worried. When he saw your determination to become a detective, to tackle organized crime specifically, those worries deepened." I thought about my father's reaction when I told him about my promotion to detective, pride mixed with something I couldn't identify at the time. Had it been fear? "If what you're saying is true," I said slowly, "then my investigation into your organization was misguided. I should have been looking at Victorio, at corruption within the department." "Your investigation was thorough and based on the information you had," Dominic replied, surprising me with what sounded like genuine respect. "My businesses do operate in gray areas of the law, but Victorio represents a different level of threat, to this city and to you personally." Before I could respond, the door opened, and Andre, the bodyguard I recognized from the night of my rescue, appeared, his expression tense. "Boss, we have a situation," he said in a clipped tone. "Perimeter alarms were triggered on the east side of the property." Dominic stood immediately, his posture changing, tension radiating from him. "Secure the house. Move the men to positions B and C, and get Dr. Petrov in here now." Andre nodded once and disappeared. Dominic turned back to me, his expression grim. "What's happening?" I asked, trying to push myself up in the bed, frustration burning through me at my inability to stand, to move, to defend myself. "Possibly nothing," he replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "A deer triggering the sensors, perhaps. But we don't take chances." He moved to a painting on the wall, swung it aside to reveal a small safe. After entering a combination, he withdrew a handgun and brought it to me. "Your service weapon was lost during the ambush," he said, placing the gun on the bed beside me. "This is a similar model. I assume you know how to use it." I picked up the Glock, checking it automatically, loaded, round in the chamber, safety on. It felt good to have a weapon again, to have some measure of control returned to me. "I'd prefer not to have a shootout in my home," Dominic continued. "But if it comes to that, I trust you'll remember who the real enemy is." Our eyes locked, a silent communication passing between us. A temporary truce, a mutual understanding. Whatever was happening outside, whoever might be coming for us, we were in this together for now. Dr. Petrov rushed in, looking concerned. "Mr. Russo, what's happening?" "Precautionary measures," Dominic replied calmly. "I need Detective Hayes moved to the secure room." "Can she be transported?" Yes, but we must be careful with her back, the doctor replied, already moving to disconnect monitors. Wait, I interjected. I'm not going anywhere until I know what's happening. Dominic's gaze was steady, intense. What's happening, Alex, is that someone may have found us. And if it's Victorio's men, they're not coming to talk. Dr. Petrov and a grim-faced Andre transferred me to a wheelchair with efficiency that spoke of preparation for exactly this scenario. The gun remained in my lap, hidden beneath a blanket but within easy reach. Every movement sent pain radiating from my injured spine, but I clenched my teeth against it, refusing to show weakness. This way, Dominic directed, leading us down a hallway lined with expensive artwork that seemed at odds with our urgent pace. We reached what appeared to be a library. Walls of leather-bound books, heavy furniture, a stone fireplace, when Dominic pressed something beneath the mantel. A section of bookcase swung silently inward, revealing a hidden passage. Really? I couldn't help but comment despite the tension. A secret room behind a bookcase? That's not cliché at all. A ghost of a smile touched Dominic's lips. Sometimes classics are classics for a reason. The hidden room was smaller than I expected but well appointed. Medical equipment similar to what had been in my recovery room, a small bathroom, several monitors showing security camera feeds from around the property, and a comfortable-looking bed. Get her settled, Dominic instructed the doctor before turning to Andre. Status report. 2 vehicles approaching from the east access road, the bodyguard replied, checking his phone. Not Victorio's usual cars. They tripped the secondary sensors after bypassing the first set. Professionals, Dominic muttered. How many men do we have on site? 6, plus the doctor and myself. Dominic nodded, processing this. Have the men take defensive positions. No engagement unless necessary. I want to know who we're dealing with first. As Andre left, I caught Dominic's arm. I need to know what's happening. All of it. He looked down at my hand on his arm, then met my eyes. Best case scenario? Federal agents who somehow tracked us here. Worst case? Victorio's special ops team, the ones who handle his most sensitive eliminations. And if it's the cops? My people? I asked. Then things get complicated, he replied evenly. I've broken no laws in saving your life. But there are aspects of this situation that would be difficult to explain to your colleagues. Dr. Petrov finished reconnecting my IV and monitors, then stepped back. She should rest, Mr. Russo. The stress is not good for her recovery. I'm fine, I insisted, eyes on the security monitors. One showed 2 black SUVs slowly making their way up a tree-lined drive. Zoom in on those vehicles. Dominic pressed a few buttons on the control panel, and the image enlarged, revealing the license plates. Government plates, I noted, but blacked-out windows. Could be FBI, DEA, or... My voice trailed off as the vehicles stopped and men began to emerge. Dark suits, tactical gear visible beneath the jackets, earpieces. That's not standard federal procedure. Those aren't regular agents. Dominic's expression darkened. No, they're not. He turned to the doctor. Stay with her. Lock the door behind me. Wait, I called as he headed for the exit. What are you going to do? He paused, looking back at me. Find out what they want, and keep them away from you. After he left, the hidden door sliding shut behind him, Dr. Petrov locked it as instructed. I kept my eyes fixed on the monitors, watching as the men from the SUVs spread out, taking positions around the house with practiced precision. Those aren't feds, I murmured, more to myself than to the doctor. At least, not ones operating by the book. Dr. Petrov said nothing, busying himself checking my vitals, but I noticed his hands trembled slightly. He was afraid, and that did nothing for my confidence in the situation. On one of the monitors, I saw Dominic exit the front of the house, flanked by Andre and another guard. He wore no visible weapon, his posture relaxed but alert as he approached the apparent leader of the intruders, a tall man with silver at his temples and the rigid bearing of someone with military training. There was no audio on the security feed, but I could see them talking, Dominic's expression revealing nothing while the other man gestured emphatically. Then, abruptly, both men turned and looked directly at one of the security cameras. My blood ran cold. They knew I was watching. The silver-haired man pointed at the house, then back at the camera. Dominic shook his head, his stance shifting subtly to one I recognized from my training. He was preparing for potential conflict, positioning himself for maximum defensive advantage. "This isn't good," I said, gripping the arms of the wheelchair tightly. "They know I'm here. They're asking for me." Dr. Petrov glanced nervously between me and the monitors. "Mr. Russo will handle it. He always does." On the screen, the confrontation was escalating. 2 more men had moved to flank the leader, hands hovering near concealed weapons. Dominic remained outwardly calm, but Andre and the other guard had shifted positions, creating a protective barrier between the intruders and the house. Then, without warning, the silver-haired man reached inside his jacket. Andre reacted instantly, drawing his weapon. But before he could aim, one of the other men fired. The guard beside Dominic crumpled to the ground. The screen erupted into chaos. Men diving for cover, weapons drawn, Dominic pulling Andre back toward the house as gunfire erupted. "We need to help them," I said, trying to wheel myself toward the door. Dr. Petrov moved to block me. "No, you cannot. Mr. Russo gave strict instructions." "I don't care," I snapped, pulling the gun from beneath the blanket. "Those men are here for me. I'm not hiding while people die on my account." The doctor paled at the sight of the weapon, but stood his ground. "You cannot even walk. What do you think you will do?" He had a point, one that filled me with helpless rage. On the monitors, the firefight continued. Dominic had made it back inside the house with Andre, who appeared to be wounded but mobile. The intruders were advancing, using tactical formation to approach the building from multiple angles. I watched in growing horror as one of Dominic's men fell on the eastern perimeter, another taking cover behind a garden wall as bullets struck stone around him. This wasn't a standoff or an arrest attempt. It was an assault with deadly intent. Suddenly, the door to our hidden room unlocked and swung open. I raised the gun instinctively, only lowering it when Dominic appeared, breathing heavily, a streak of blood across his cheek. "We need to move," he said without preamble. "There's a tunnel from the wine cellar that leads to the boathouse. We have a boat ready." "What about your men?" I asked, as Dr. Petrov hurriedly disconnected my monitors. Something dark and pained flashed across Dominic's features. "2 dead. Andre and 1 other wounded but covering our retreat." "Who are they?" I demanded as he took control of the wheelchair, pushing me quickly through the exit and down another hallway. "Not regular feds. Not Victorio's usual crew either." "Special Tactics Unit," he replied grimly. "Elite contractors that officially don't exist. They work for whoever pays the most. And right now, that appears to be someone who wants both of us dead." We reached a staircase, and without warning, Dominic lifted me from the wheelchair. Despite the circumstances, I was struck by the gentleness of his hold. The care he took not to jostle my injured back as he carried me down the steps. "What about the doctor?" I asked, noticing that Petrov wasn't following us. "Taking another route," Dominic answered shortly. "We'll rendezvous at the safe house." The wine cellar was dimly lit and smelled of earth and oak. Dominic carried me past racks of expensive bottles to what appeared to be a solid stone wall. He shifted my weight to free one hand, pressed against a specific stone, and a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a narrow tunnel. "This property has been in my family for generations," he explained as he ducked into the passage, still carrying me. "During Prohibition, my grandfather used these tunnels to move product. The passage was damp and musty, illuminated only by small emergency lights along the floor. Every step Dominic took echoed softly, and I found myself holding my breath, listening for sounds of pursuit. "How did they find us?" I whispered, acutely aware of how close we were, my arms around his neck, my face inches from his. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice equally low. "This location isn't in any records. Only my most trusted people know about it." "Then you have a leak," I said. "Someone close to you." His jaw tightened. "So it would seem." We emerged into what appeared to be a boathouse, where a sleek powerboat waited, bobbing gently on the water. Dominic set me carefully on one of the seats before moving to prepare the vessel for departure. "Where are we going?" I asked as he untied the moorings. "Somewhere no one knows about," he replied, starting the engine. "Not even my inner circle." As the boat pulled away from the dock, I looked back at the lake house. Smoke was now visible rising from one wing, and the distant pop of gunfire continued. Men were dying back there, Dominic's men, but also whoever these attackers were. Men who had come for me. "This is my fault," I said quietly. Dominic's eyes remained fixed on the water ahead as he navigated away from the property. "No, this is Victorio's doing. Or whoever he's working with." "You don't sound certain it's him," I observed. "Those weren't his usual tactics," Dominic admitted. "Victorio's ambitious, but predictable. This was something else, something bigger." We fell silent as the boat picked up speed, cutting through the water toward the opposite shore. The lake was larger than I'd realized from my window view, stretching for what must have been miles in either direction. When we reached the safe house, I said after several minutes had passed, "I need to contact my precinct. This has gone beyond keeping me hidden for my own protection. Whatever's happening, they need to know." Dominic glanced at me, then back at the water. "If there's a leak in my organization, there could be one in yours too. Your Captain Anders has always been suspiciously well informed about my operations." The suggestion sent a chill through me. Captain Anders had been my mentor, the one who had encouraged me to pursue the Russo investigation in the first place. The idea that he might be compromised was difficult to accept, but no more difficult than learning my father had maintained a friendship with Dominic Russo throughout his career. "I need to trust someone," I insisted. "And right now, Marcus is the only one I'm sure of." Dominic's expression tightened almost imperceptibly at the mention of my partner's name. "We'll discuss it when we're secure," he said, effectively ending the conversation as he guided the boat into a small cove, hidden from view by overhanging trees. The shore here was undeveloped, a stretch of dense forest rather than the manicured lawns and elegant homes that dominated the other side of the lake. Dominic helped me from the boat, once again carrying me with surprising care, and headed toward what appeared to be nothing more than a dilapidated fishing cabin. Looks could be deceiving, I was learning. Just like everything else in my rapidly unraveling world, the fishing cabin's weathered exterior gave no hint of its true nature. Inside, beneath rough-hewn beams and behind walls that appeared to be crumbling, lay a secure facility with modern amenities. A generator providing electricity, communication equipment, weapons, supplies, and most importantly, medical provisions. Dominic settled me on a narrow but comfortable bed in what seemed to be designated as the medical area. Without Dr. Petrov, he took it upon himself to check my wound and administer the pain medication I was due for. "You've done this before," I observed, as he expertly changed my bandages, his touch clinical but gentle. "When you live in my world, you learn many skills," he replied without elaboration. "The doctor should be here within a few hours, assuming he made it out." The possibility that Dr. Petrov might not have escaped hung between us, adding to the weight of lives already lost. Once he finished tending to me, Dominic moved to the communication equipment, attempting to make contact with his remaining men. I watched him work, noting the tension in his shoulders, the controlled precision of his movements that couldn't quite hide his concern. This man, whom I had studied as a target for months, was suddenly human to me in ways my case files had never captured. "Any contact?" I asked after several minutes of his increasingly frustrated attempts. He shook his head, jaw tight. "Nothing from Andre or the others. The frequency might be compromised, or they didn't make it out," I said quietly. Dominic's hands stilled on the equipment, his back to me. "That's also a possibility." A silence fell between us, heavy with unspoken realities about the men who had died, men who, in my previous worldview, would have been nothing more than criminals receiving their due. Now they had faces, names, loyalties that complicated my neat categories of justice. "You should rest," Dominic said finally, turning back to me. "We're secure here for now. I need to contact Marcus," I insisted again. "If there's corruption in the department, he needs to be warned, and he can help us figure out who's behind this." Dominic studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "There's a secure line here. Untraceable. But you need to be certain of him, Alex. Your life, and possibly his, depends on it." "I am certain," I replied without hesitation. "Marcus isn't just my partner, He's the most honest cop I know. Something flashed in Dominic's eyes. Resignation, perhaps, or something more complex. He brought me a satellite phone, then stepped away to give me privacy, moving to the cabin's small kitchen area, where he began preparing what looked like coffee. I dialed Marcus's personal cell number, my heart pounding as it rang. Once. Twice. "Stone," came the familiar voice, tense and tired. "Marcus, it's me. It's Alex," I said, my voice catching unexpectedly. There was a moment of stunned silence, then, "Alex? Jesus Christ, where are you? Are you okay? Everyone thinks you're—" "I know what everyone thinks," I cut in. "I can't explain everything now, but I'm alive. I was injured in the ambush, but I'm recovering." "Injured how? Where are you?" The relief in his voice was giving way to detective mode. "I'll come get you. Bring a medical team." "No," I interrupted firmly. "That's not possible right now. Marcus, listen to me. The ambush wasn't random. It was ordered by Carlo Vittorio." "Vittorio?" he echoed. "Our intelligence indicated it was Russo's men who—" "The intelligence was wrong," I said. "Deliberately wrong. There's corruption in the department, Marcus. High up. Maybe all the way to Anders." Silence again. This time heavier. "That's a serious accusation, Alex." "What evidence do you have?" I glanced at Dominic, who was watching me while pretending not to, his body language alert despite his casual posture. "It's complicated," I admitted. "But I need you to trust me. Can you access my case files without alerting anyone? The ones on the Russo investigation?" "Probably," Marcus replied cautiously. "But why?" "Because I missed something," I said. "Or maybe I was deliberately led away from it. I need you to look at the financial traces, the shell companies. See if any of them connect back to Vittorio or to any accounts associated with the department leadership. Alex, what you're suggesting—" His voice trailed off, the implications too enormous to articulate. "I know," I said softly. "But people are dying, Marcus, and someone very powerful wants me dead too. Where are you?" he asked again. "Let me help you." I hesitated, torn between trust and caution. "I can't tell you that yet, but I'm safe for now. I'll contact you again in 24 hours. Be careful who you talk to." After ending the call, I looked up to find Dominic standing closer than I expected, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You didn't tell him who you're with," he observed, offering me one of the mugs. I accepted it, the warmth seeping into my cold fingers. "No, he wouldn't understand. Not yet," Dominic nodded, taking a seat across from me. "Your partner cares for you." It was in his voice. Something in his tone made me look at him more closely. "Yes, he does, as I care for him. And yet you trust me enough to stay here, rather than having him extract you to safety," Dominic noted, his dark eyes studying me over the rim of his mug. "I'm not sure trust is the word I'd use," I replied, though even as I said it, I knew it wasn't entirely true. "It's more that circumstances have forced us into an alliance." A slight smile touched his lips. "An alliance. I can work with that." Before I could respond, a sound outside the cabin froze us both. Dominic was on his feet instantly, moving to the window with practiced caution, hand reaching for the weapon at his waist. "Vehicle approaching," he said quietly. "Single occupant." My hand went to the gun he'd given me, still within reach on the bedside table. "Friendly?" "We'll see." He moved to another part of the cabin, accessing what appeared to be a hidden security panel. After checking something, his posture relaxed slightly. "It's Petrov." Relief washed through me, surprising in its intensity. I hadn't realized how concerned I'd been about the doctor's fate until that moment. Dr. Petrov entered a few minutes later, looking haggard but unharmed. He immediately came to check on me, his professional demeanor reasserting itself, despite whatever ordeal he had endured to reach us. "The others?" Dominic asked quietly, as the doctor examined my wound. Petrov shook his head once, a short, sharp gesture. "Andrei was still fighting when I left. The others—" He didn't finish the sentence. Dominic's face revealed nothing, but I saw his hand tighten around his coffee mug, the knuckles whitening momentarily before he set it aside. "Did you see who they were?" I asked Petrov. "Any insignia, identification?" Nothing obvious, the doctor replied, as he checked my vital signs, but they were not regular law enforcement or military. Too efficient. And the way he said the last word sent a chill through me. Mercenaries, Dominic said flatly. High-end contractors. The question is, who hired them? Victorio doesn't have those kinds of connections, I pointed out. Not for that level of operatives. No, Dominic agreed. He doesn't. But someone with government or intelligence community connections might. The implication hung in the air between us. If someone at that level was involved, the conspiracy was far larger than I had imagined. Dr. Petrov finished his examination and stepped away, reporting to Dominic in a low voice. I caught fragments. Recovery progressing. Needs continued rest. Possibility of partial mobility. Before they moved further away, their conversation becoming inaudible. I used the moment alone to process everything that had happened, everything I had learned. My father's connection to Dominic Russo. The corruption potentially reaching to the highest levels of my precinct. The attack that had nearly killed me. And the subsequent assault on the lake house. My worldview had been shattered, then reconstructed into something I barely recognized. And yet, amidst all this chaos and uncertainty, one thing had become increasingly clear. Dominic Russo was not the villain I had believed him to be. Complex, dangerous, operating outside the law, yes, but also loyal, protective, guided by principles I was only beginning to understand. When he returned to my side, his expression was grave. Petrov needs supplies to continue your treatment. There's a pharmacy in a small town about 40 minutes from here where we have an arrangement. I need to go with him to ensure security. You're leaving me here alone? I asked, surprised at the hint of vulnerability in my voice. His eyes softened almost imperceptibly. The cabin is secure. No one knows about this place, and you're armed. He nodded toward the gun. Can I trust you not to call in the cavalry while I'm gone? I met his gaze steadily. We have an alliance, remember? I won't betray that. He held my eyes for a moment longer, then nodded. We'll be as quick as possible, 2 hours at most. After they left, the cabin fell into a silence broken only by the soft hum of the generator and the occasional call of birds outside. I dozed fitfully, the pain medication making my thoughts drift, until the sound of a vehicle approaching jerked me fully awake. Too soon. They hadn't been gone long enough to reach town and back. I reached for the gun, heart pounding, and aimed it at the door. Seconds stretched into minutes with no entry, no sound beyond the initial approach. Then a soft knock. Alex? A familiar voice called. Alex, are you in there? It's Marcus. My blood ran cold. I hadn't told him where I was, couldn't have, because I didn't know myself. Marcus? I called back, keeping my voice steady despite my racing thoughts. How did you find me? Trace the satellite phone, he replied. Please open the door. I came alone, I swear. My instincts warred with my loyalty. This was Marcus, my partner, my friend, the man I had trusted with my life countless times. The door's unlocked, I said finally, keeping the gun trained steadily on the entrance. The door opened slowly, and Marcus stepped inside, hands raised to show he was unarmed. His eyes found me immediately, widening at the sight of the gun in my hands. Alex, he said softly. Thank God you're alive. How did you really find me? I demanded, not lowering the weapon. The phone was untraceable. A shadow crossed his face. Nothing is untraceable to the right people. He took a step closer. You need to come with me now. It's not safe here. Stay where you are, I warned as he moved. Who sent you, Marcus? Victorio? Or someone higher up? Pain and regret flashed in his eyes. You don't understand, Alex. You're in over your head. There are things happening that are bigger than Russo. Bigger than Victorio? Then explain it to me, I challenged. He sighed heavily. Your father knew. That's why he had to die. The words hit me like a physical blow. What are you talking about? My father had a heart attack. Marcus's laugh was hollow. Is that what Russo told you? Your father was getting too close to the truth, asking too many questions. The heart attack was arranged. I felt sick, the gun suddenly heavy in my hands. No, that's not possible. I'm sorry, Alex. I tried to keep you safe, to steer your investigation toward Russo and away from the real operation. But then you started connecting dots no one expected you to find. So, the ambush, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. That was you? Not Victorio? He nodded once. A clean elimination was the plan. But Russo interfered, as he always does. Now I have to finish this. His hand moved toward his jacket. The door burst open behind him. Marcus whirled, but not fast enough. Dominic's shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. I fired instinctively as he turned back toward me, my bullet striking his chest. Marcus crumpled to the floor as Dominic rushed to check if he was carrying other weapons. Our eyes met over my former partner's body, a silent communication passing between us. Shock, confirmation, shared understanding of betrayal. He said my father was murdered, I said numbly. That his heart attack was arranged. Dominic's expression darkened. I suspected, but couldn't prove it. Patrick started asking questions about offshore accounts, unusual departmental expenditures. Then suddenly, he was gone. He was my partner, I whispered, looking down at Marcus's still form. I trusted him completely. The deepest betrayals always come from those closest to us, Dominic said quietly, moving to my side. I'm sorry, Alex. 2 weeks later, I sat on the veranda of another safe house, this one on the coast, with the endless horizon of the ocean before me. My legs were responding more each day to the physical therapy, and Dr. Petrov was cautiously optimistic about a full recovery. Dominic joined me, setting a cup of coffee beside me before taking the chair to my right. The files you sent to the FBI resulted in 7 arrests at your precinct, he informed me, including Anders. The corruption went deeper than even I had suspected. And Victorio, found dead in his yacht yesterday, apparent suicide, though we both know better. I nodded, understanding the implication. Someone higher up was tying up loose ends. And us? Are we still targets? Dominic's hand found mine on the armrest, his touch unexpectedly gentle. Likely. But they'll be more careful now that their operation has been exposed. So, what happens next? I asked, turning to face him. His dark eyes held mine, the intensity in them now familiar, almost comforting. That depends on you, Alex. Your career with the police is over, but there are other ways to pursue justice. With you? I asked, the question carrying more weight than its simple words suggested. A smile touched his lips, genuine in a way I had come to recognize. With me. As a partner, not a prisoner. Your father would have wanted you safe, but he also would have wanted you to keep fighting for what's right. I looked out at the ocean again, feeling the sun on my face, the breeze in my hair, and Dominic's hand steady in mine. The world I had known was gone, replaced by one more complex, more dangerous, but perhaps more honest in its acknowledgement of the gray areas between right and wrong. Partners, I agreed, turning my hand to intertwine my fingers with his. But I make my own rules. His laugh was warm and real. I would expect nothing less from Patrick Hayes' daughter. As the sun began to set over the water, casting golden light across the waves, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me since that rainy night on the road. My path forward was uncertain, dangerous, but for the first time it was truly my own.